"You're so selfish, you'd ruin this family over a misunderstanding," my mother cried. "I'm warning you, Clara, you need to let this go." Can you imagine spending your entire life trying to be perfect, not for yourself, but just to earn a single scrap of the affection your parents give away so freely to your sibling? Can you imagine finally achieving a life you're proud of, only to watch that golden child sibling decide he wants to take it all, and your parents are ready to hand him the matches to burn it down? Because that's the life I was living, right up until the moment I decided to burn it all down first. My name is Clara. I'm 29, and I'm a senior accountant at a high-end marketing agency in New York City. Or at least I was. This is the story of how my brother tried to frame me for a federal crime, and how my family helped him do it. My family operates on a simple, unspoken system. My younger brother, Leo, is the sun, and I am a distant, functional planet. He's the golden child, I'm the scapegoat. It wasn't always loud or obvious. It was in the quiet details. When Leo got a B on a paper, my parents would say the teacher didn't understand his unique brilliance. When I got an A-, my father would look at the paper and ask, "What did you miss?" When Leo announced he was going to be a filmmaker, a DJ, a brand visionary, each new dream more ephemeral than the last, they bought him the equipment, their faces glowing with pride. When I told them I was majoring in accounting, my mother's face fell. "Oh, Clara," she'd said, a little sigh escaping her lips. "That's practical. Practical. That was me. The practical one, the responsible one. The one who got the scholarships, who worked 3 jobs in college, who moved to the most expensive city in the country and built a career from nothing. I was the one who co-signed Leo's first apartment lease when his credit was shot. I was the one who helped him get an entry-level job at my firm, Vexler and Finch, convincing my boss that his creative energy would be an asset. I did it all because deep down, in a place I refused to look at, I still believed that if I were useful enough, if I were helpful enough, they would finally see me. It was a deep, psychological wound I kept trying to patch with achievements, a wound shaped exactly like my brother's shadow. The beginning of the end started on a Tuesday. It was a crisp October afternoon in Manhattan, the kind where the sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue. I was neck-deep in quarterly reports when I got an email from HR. "Clara, can you pop by the 34th floor conference room? Just a quick chat with me and David." David was my boss, the CFO. A quick chat with the CFO and the head of HR is never quick, and it's never good. My stomach instantly hollowed out. I smoothed down my blouse, my hands feeling clammy. As I walked down the long, glass-walled hallway, I could feel my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I did a frantic mental inventory. Had I missed a deadline? Made a calculation error? My work was my armor. The idea that it might be flawed sent a jolt of pure panic through me. I stepped into the conference room. David and Sarah from HR were sitting at the long mahogany table, their faces unreadable. On the large screen at the end of the room was a spreadsheet. My spreadsheet. "Clara, have a seat," David said, his voice flat. He gestured to the screen. "We're doing a routine audit of our T&E expenses, and a few things got flagged in your cost center. We just need you to walk us through them." I looked at the screen. It was a list of expenses approved under my departmental code. But the numbers were wrong. Horribly wrong. There were charges for $1,000 dinners at Per Se, flights to Miami I never took, charges from a boutique hotel in Soho, and a single, staggering $15,000 charge from what looked like a high-end audio equipment store. The total was pushing $80,000. I don't understand," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "These aren't mine. I've never seen these before." Sarah slid a folder across the table. "According to the system, they were all processed using your login credentials, Clara. Some were even submitted from your company laptop." I opened the folder. Inside were printed receipts. My name wasn't on them, but the approval codes, the digital signatures, they were all tied to me. It looked like I had been living some kind of secret, lavish life on the company's dime. I felt dizzy, the room starting to tilt. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. A glitch? A hack? It had to be a system error. Then a darker thought flickered in my mind, a thought so ugly I tried to shove it down. Leo. He was the only other person who knew my work laptop password. I had given it to him a few months ago when his own machine was on the fritz, and he needed to finish a presentation. "You're a lifesaver, C. I owe you big time," he'd said. No, he wouldn't. He couldn't. My own brother? The guilt of even thinking it made me feel sick. I need to look into this, I said, my voice shaking. This is a mistake. I can prove it. David's expression was cold. We're launching a full investigation. Until it's concluded, we're placing you on paid administrative leave. Please gather your personal belongings. We'll have security escort you out. The words hit me like a physical blow. Escorted out. Like a criminal. I walked back to my desk in a daze, the entire open-plan office falling silent as I passed. Everyone was watching. I could feel their stares on my back, 100 pairs of eyes full of suspicion and whispered gossip. I packed my bag, my hands trembling so badly I could barely zip it. As security walked me to the elevator, I saw Leo across the floor. He was standing with his team, watching me. He had a look on his face I'd never seen before, not concern, not pity. It was a flicker of something that looked chillingly like triumph. The first call I made on the subway ride home was to my mother. I was crying, the words tumbling out in a choked, panicked rush. I told her everything, the expenses, the suspension, the humiliation. I needed my mom. I needed her to tell me it was going to be okay. "Oh, honey, that's terrible," she said, her voice laced with anxiety. "But are you sure you didn't just make a mistake? You've been so stressed lately. Maybe you forgot." "Forgot? Mom, I didn't forget spending $80,000. Someone did this to me." There was a pause. I knew she was thinking what I was thinking. I could feel it through the phone. "It wasn't Leo," she said, her voice suddenly sharp, defensive. "Don't even think it. He wouldn't do that. He loves his job. He loves you." I laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "How can you be so sure? He's the only one who had access." "Clara, stop it," she snapped. "Your brother is a creative, sensitive soul. He doesn't even understand things like this. You're the numbers person. This is your world. You need to look at your own records and figure out what you did wrong. Don't you dare try to drag your brother into your mess." My mess. I hung up the phone, my whole body numb. The betrayal was so swift, so absolute. I hadn't even accused him, not really. I had just raised the possibility, and in an instant, the walls had gone up around their precious boy. I was on the outside, alone. It was a dynamic as old as our family itself. I was the scapegoat. Any problem, any conflict, any ugliness was my fault by default, because the alternative, that the golden child was flawed, was simply unthinkable. I got home to my small apartment in Astoria, collapsed onto my bed, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, the full weight of my family's dysfunction pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. The next few days were a blur of shame and suffocating anxiety. Being on leave was like being in a sensory deprivation tank. My work, my colleagues, my routine, it was all gone. Replaced by silence and the four walls of my apartment. My parents called every day, but not to ask how I was. They called for updates, their voices tight with worry. Worry for Leo. "Have you figured it out yet?" My father, Richard, asked, his tone clipped. "This whole thing is a cloud over the family name, Clara. And it's not fair to Leo. People at the office are talking. It's not fair to Leo?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Dad, I'm about to lose my job, my career, everything I've worked for. I might be charged with embezzlement." "Don't be dramatic," he said, his voice cold. "Just find the error and fix it. That's what you're good at. Fix it. That was my role. I was the fixer. I was expected to clean up a mess I hadn't made, to protect the person who had almost certainly made it. The gaslighting was suffocating. They were making me feel like I was crazy, like my own righteous anger was a form of hysteria. I decided I had to talk to Leo directly. I needed to see his face, to hear his voice. I took the subway to his trendy Dumbo apartment, my stomach in knots. The old Clara, the conflict-avoidant Clara, would have let this fester. But the woman who had been escorted out of her own office like a common thief was starting to find a new, unfamiliar anger. He opened the door, a picture of casual cool in a vintage band t-shirt and joggers. "Clara. Hey. This is random. What's up?" "What's up?" I said, pushing past him into the apartment. "Leo, we need to talk. About the expenses." He leaned against his kitchen island, all feigned innocence. "Oh yeah, that. I heard. It's totally insane. I can't believe they think you'd do that." "Someone did," I said, my eyes locked on his. "And they used my laptop and my credentials. You're the only one who had them." His face changed. The easy charm evaporated, replaced by a cold defensiveness. "Whoa, are you seriously accusing me right now?" He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Unbelievable. After I've been defending you to everyone at work. Have you?" I shot back. Or have you been letting me twist in the wind? You know what, he said, his voice rising. This is so typical. The second something goes wrong in your perfect little life, you have to find someone to blame. God forbid you ever made a mistake. It has to be me, right? The screw-up. The creative who can't be trusted. He was using my own insecurities against me, twisting my pain into an attack on him. He was so good at it. He'd been practicing his whole life. This isn't about that, Leo. This is about $80,000. You know, maybe Mom and Dad are right, he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. Maybe you are just jealous. You're stuck in your boring little spreadsheets all day, and for the first time, I'm actually succeeding at something, getting noticed. You can't stand it, can you? You have to tear me down. The accusation was so perverse, so backwards, it left me speechless. Jealous? I had handed him his career on a silver platter. I had championed him, supported him, enabled him. Get out, he said, his voice low and menacing. Get out of my apartment. I left, stumbling back out into the bright afternoon sunlight. The conversation hadn't brought clarity. It had just muddied the waters even more. He was so convincing in his indignation. A tiny, insidious seed of doubt started to sprout in my mind. What if he was right? What if I was so stressed I did something and blocked it out? What if this was all some horrible, elaborate mistake that was, in fact, my fault? That's the true evil of being a scapegoat. You spend so long being told you're the problem that you start to believe it yourself. Back in my apartment, I spiraled. I replayed every conversation, every transaction, every moment of the last 6 months, searching for the error I was so sure I must have made. The guilt was a physical weight, a pressure in my chest that made it hard to take a full breath. I was trapped between my gut instinct that Leo had betrayed me and my deeply ingrained programming to blame myself. Then I made a mistake. A huge, life-altering mistake born of fear and a desperate, childish need for a hero. I called my father. Not for an argument, but for help. My father was a successful businessman, a partner at a consulting firm. He was pragmatic, logical, and if anyone could see through the emotional chaos to the facts, it was him. I had this fantasy that he would be the one to finally step in, the patriarch who would fix everything. I laid out the whole story for him, this time without tears or accusations. I just gave him the facts, including my suspicion of Leo and Leo's hostile reaction. I told him I was scared. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Okay, he said, his voice measured. This is a mess. Let me handle it. I'll talk to Leo. I'll look into it. Don't talk to anyone else. Just let me handle it. The relief that washed over me was so profound it almost brought me to my knees. Let me handle it. Those were the words I had been waiting my whole life to hear from him. It felt like absolution. It felt like he was finally choosing me. I put my trust in him completely. I stopped my frantic searching. I waited. I believed my father would make it right. I had no idea I was just a lamb being led to a much bigger, more public slaughter. The call from my father never came. Instead, a week later, I saw a post on Instagram. It was from a colleague, a photo album from Vexler and Finch's annual Starlight Gala, a massive self-congratulatory awards ceremony the agency threw every year. I obviously hadn't been invited. I scrolled through the pictures of my co-workers in tuxedos and gowns, a bitter taste in my mouth. And then I saw it. A picture of my parents. They were at a table near the stage, beaming. My mother was in a new sequin dress, my father in his best suit. They were sitting with Leo. I kept swiping. There was a video. It was Leo on stage, accepting the Rising Star of the Year award. He was holding the crystal trophy, his face a mask of humble emotion. Wow, he said, his voice thick. This is incredible. I have to be honest, it's been a challenging year. There have been professional challenges, and even some difficult family situations that have tested me. He paused, looking out into the audience, right where my parents were sitting. But through it all, my family's support has been my rock. They never stopped believing in me. The camera panned to my parents. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a napkin. My father was applauding, a slow, proud, deliberate clap. He looked directly at Leo, his face filled with an expression I had spent my entire life trying to earn, pure, unadulterated pride. I dropped my phone. The screen cracked. I didn't care. The air in my apartment felt thin, unbreathable. This was the public destruction. This was the show trial. They hadn't just chosen him. They had publicly sanctified him while I was at home, disgraced and unemployed. Leo, the victim. Leo, the rising star who had overcome so much. And I was the difficult family situation. the unnamed, unpersoned problem he had so bravely triumphed over. And my father, the man who had promised to handle it. He was there, leading the standing ovation. His promise wasn't to find the truth. It was to manage the optics, to ensure the golden child's narrative remained pristine. The betrayal wasn't just a failure to act. It was a deliberate, calculated performance. He had used my trust as a tool to pacify me while he helped orchestrate my public erasure. That was the moment something inside me finally, irrevocably broke. The part of me that craved their approval, the part that was willing to shrink and apologize and doubt myself just to keep the peace, it withered and died on my living room floor. And in its place, a cold, diamond-hard fury began to form. They thought I was the problem. I was about to become a problem they couldn't even imagine. My period of mourning was over. It was time to go to war. The first thing I did was hire a lawyer, a sharp, hungry litigator who specialized in employment law and white-collar defense. The second thing I did was turn my apartment into a war room. The hurt, the shame, the guilt, I channeled all of it into a singular, obsessive focus. I was an accountant. My superpower wasn't creativity or charm. It was an unyielding, meticulous attention to detail. Leo and my father had underestimated me. They saw my profession as boring. They were about to find out just how powerful boring could be. I couldn't access Wechsler and Finch's main servers from home, but I still had a cached version of my work drive on my personal laptop. And I had something better, my brain. I knew our accounting software, NetSuite, inside and out. I knew its vulnerabilities. I knew its architecture. And I started digging. It was slow, painstaking work. I spent 18-hour days combing through metadata, cross-referencing IP addresses from email headers with location data from my own phone records. I started building a timeline. A charge from the fancy restaurant, per se? I pulled the IP address from the digital receipts metadata. It wasn't my office. It was from a public Wi-Fi network at a Starbucks on the Upper West Side, 2 blocks from Leo's girlfriend's apartment. A weekend charge from the Soho Hotel? I went on to Leo's Instagram. There he was 2 months ago, posting a staycation selfie from a hotel room that looked suspiciously familiar. The charge for the audio equipment? I found the store's website. They specialized in podcasting and DJ gear. Leo had just started a podcast. It was a trail of digital breadcrumbs, a testament to his arrogance. He thought he was so much smarter than me, so much more clever. But he was sloppy. He was an amateur playing in a professional's world. He had covered his tracks, but he'd used mud, not invisible ink. Then I found the mid-story twist, the thing that laid his motive bare. Buried deep in my laptop's temporary files was a corrupted fragment of an iMessage chat log that had synced from my work computer before I was kicked out. I spent 2 days using recovery software to piece it back together. It was a conversation between Leo and a friend from college. Friend, dude, how's the new gig? Still liking it. Leo, it's okay. The creative is cool, but my psycho sister is watching my every move. The accountant. LOL. Friend, she's the one who got you the job, right? Leo, yeah. Which is why she owes me. I was the one stuck at home with them all through high school while she was off winning awards and being the genius. Dad never shut up about her perfect SAT scores. It was hell. She has no idea. I had to read it 3 times before I could process it. His resentment wasn't about me being the golden child. It was the opposite. He resented me for the one thing I thought went completely unnoticed, my academic achievements. In his twisted, self-centered worldview, my good grades hadn't made me invisible. They had made me the star. My quiet, head-down-in-a-book childhood, which I remembered as lonely and isolating, he had experienced as a personal affront. My success was a theft of the attention he felt was rightfully his. The framing wasn't just about the money. It was about revenge. It was a petty, vicious attempt to reclaim a spotlight he felt I had stolen from him 2 decades ago. He needed to prove that I wasn't so perfect, that the genius was a fraud. He needed to tear me down to feel big. Armed with this, my lawyer and I initiated our counteroffensive. We sent a detailed, evidence-packed letter to Wechsler and Finch's board of directors and their general counsel, bypassing David and HR completely. We laid out the evidence of Leo's fraud and my impending lawsuit for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. We made it clear that the company had a choice. Either they were the victims of Leo's fraud along with me, or they were his accomplices. The reaction was swift. I got a call from the firm's top lawyer. His tone was no longer dismissive. It was deferential. An emergency? Off-the-books meeting was scheduled for the following week. Me, my lawyer, the CEO, the head of the board, and David from finance. Leo and his counsel were also required to attend. The day before the meeting, my father called. His voice was different. The cold authority was gone, replaced by a strained, desperate edge. "Clara, I just got a call from Leo's lawyer," he started, his voice low. "He told me about the evidence you found. The IP addresses, the texts. You need to stop this." "Stop this," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm just getting started." "You don't understand what you're doing," he pleaded, and for the first time, I heard real fear in his voice. "You're going to ruin him. His life will be over. He's your brother. He framed me for a felony, Dad. And you stood on a stage and applauded him for it. You gave up the right to tell me what to do for the family the second you did that." There was a heavy silence on the line. I could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven. "I have a copy of the evidence you submitted," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "I need you to retract it. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you were confused. I'll pay the money back myself. All of it. We can make this go away." The offer was so galling, so insulting, I almost laughed. He thought this was about money. He thought he could buy my silence, buy my complicity in my own destruction. "No," I said simply. And then the final twist. The one that shattered the last remaining pieces of the girl I used to be. He cracked. His voice broke, filled with a raw, panicked desperation I had never heard before. "Clara, please. You can't do this to me." "To you?" I asked, confused. "This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me," he choked out, his voice a ragged mess. I helped him. When he first came to me, scared he was going to get fired for a few stupid expenses, I showed him how to do it. How to bury the charges in different cost centers. How to use your credentials to make it look like a bigger, more confusing mess. I thought it would just get written off as a system error. I never thought it would get this big. I was just trying to protect your brother. He's not strong like you, Clara. He needed this. The phone felt slick in my hand. My blood ran cold. The world seemed to stop spinning. He hadn't just covered for Leo. He had been an active co-conspirator. The architect. My father, the brilliant businessman, the man I had worshipped and feared and revered my whole life, had used his expertise to help his son frame his daughter. He had looked me in the eye and promised to handle it, knowing he was the one who had orchestrated the entire thing. The depth of the betrayal was bottomless. It was a black hole. And in that moment, I knew I had him. I looked at my phone. The call was recording. It was a habit I'd picked up since this all began. One-party consent is legal in New York. "He needed this?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "What about what I needed, Dad? Did you ever, for 1 second, think about me?" "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words sounding pathetic, meaningless. "Clara, for the family." "Drop it." "The family," I said, a strange, cold smile spreading across my face. "You know what, Dad? I think you're right. It is time for a big family meeting." I hung up the phone. I had my silver bullet, and I was going to fire it right into the heart of their perfect, gilded world. The meeting took place in the main boardroom on the 40th floor, a sterile, intimidating space with a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. The air was thick with tension. On one side of the massive granite table sat the CEO, Marcus Thorne, the chairman of the board, and a stone-faced David. On the other side sat Leo, pale and fidgety, with his bargain bin lawyer. And at the head of the table, to my complete and utter shock, sat my father. He had inserted himself into the meeting, playing the role of the concerned patriarch trying to mediate. The arrogance was breathtaking. My lawyer and I sat opposite them. I was wearing a simple, severe black dress. I felt nothing. No fear, no anxiety. Just a profound, unnerving calm. I was a force of nature now. A reckoning. Leo's lawyer started, reading from a prepared statement about a profound misunderstanding and systemic accounting errors, painting a picture of Leo as a young creative baffled by a complex corporate system. My father nodded along gravely, a mask of paternal concern etched on his face. He was ready to play his part, to steer the conversation toward a quiet, face-saving settlement. They were expecting me to argue, to cry, to be the emotional, hysterical woman they had always painted me as. I did none of those things. When it was our turn, my lawyer, a man named Ben, simply said, "We're not here to debate system errors." He placed a sleek, thin laptop on the table. "We're here to listen to a confession." He pressed a key, and my father's voice filled the silent room. "Clara, please. You can't do this to me. I helped him. I showed him how to do it, how to bury the charges. I was just trying to protect your brother. He's not strong like you, Clara. He needed this. The color drained from my father's face. He looked like he had been shot. He stared at me, his eyes wide with horror and disbelief. Leo froze, his mouth half open, looking from the laptop to our father as if seeing him for the first time. The CEO, Marcus Thorne, who had been leaning back in his chair, slowly sat forward, his expression hardening into pure fury. The public humiliation had begun. It wasn't loud. It was silent, and it was devastating. Ben let the recording play to the end. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. As you can hear, Ben said, his voice cutting through the tension, this was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, fraudulent conspiracy to frame my client, orchestrated not just by your employee, but by her father, a senior partner at a major New York consulting firm. He looked directly at Marcus Thorne. Ms. Hayes is prepared to go to the press with this recording and her full story. The story of how Wexler and Finch not only allowed a toxic, predatory employee to thrive, but how its weak internal controls were manipulated by an outsider to destroy the career of one of its most dedicated employees. Or, he paused, letting the threat hang in the air, you can make this right. Today. My father tried to speak. That was taken out of context. Shut up, Richard, Marcus Thorne snarled, his eyes blazing. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at my father and brother with a look of utter contempt. He turned to his head of security, who was standing by the door. Get them out of my building. Both of them. Their access is revoked. Call legal. Call the DA's office. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Leo started to sob, a pathetic, gulping sound. My father just sat there, broken. A powerful man reduced to a hollow shell in the space of 2 minutes. Security came forward and gently, but firmly, escorted my father and a blubbering Leo out of the room. I didn't watch them go. I just stared out the window at the skyline. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Leo and my father were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. Leo was fired, of course. My father was forced to retire from his firm in disgrace. The story was never leaked to the press, but the scandal ripped through the tight-knit world of New York finance and consulting. His reputation was annihilated. Wexler and Finch, desperate to avoid a lawsuit, gave me everything I wanted. A full public exoneration in a company-wide email from the CEO. My job back, along with a promotion to Director of Financial Integrity, a new role they created for me. And a settlement so large I could have retired at 29. It wasn't about the money. It was about the acknowledgement. It was reparations. It was the price of their mistake. I never went back to the office. I took the settlement and I walked away. I cut off my entire family. My mother left me a string of tearful, abusive voicemails, calling me a monster, a viper, the one who had ruined the family. I blocked her number. I blocked everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they were all dead to me. It's been a year now. I live in a beautiful apartment in the West Village that I bought with cash. It has a small terrace where I'm trying to grow tomatoes. I don't work in accounting anymore. I'm taking classes at NYU, studying art history, something the old, practical Clara never would have allowed herself to do. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that little girl who just wanted her dad to look at her with pride. The girl who thought her worth was measured by her achievements and her usefulness to others. I see her so clearly, and I feel a profound sense of grief for her, for all the years she spent trying to earn a love that was never going to be given. The wound of being the scapegoat, of feeling fundamentally unworthy, is deep. It may never fully disappear. But I know now that it wasn't my wound to carry. It was theirs. It was a poison they tried to pour into me, and for a long time, I let them. But I'm not that person anymore. Standing up for myself, choosing myself, even when it meant losing everything I thought was important, was the act that finally cauterized the wound. I didn't just save my career or my name. I saved myself. I became my own hero, the one I had been waiting for my whole life. The poetic justice isn't that they were punished. It's that I am finally free. So I want to leave you with this question. Have you ever been cast in a role in your family that you didn't choose? The scapegoat, the fixer, the invisible one? And what was the moment you realized you had the power to walk off their stage and build your own? Tell me in the comments. Hearing your stories helps me remember that none of us are truly alone in these fights. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing. There's a lot more to figure out on this journey, and I'd be glad to have you along for it.